All right, welcome to episode 13 of the All American Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Chris Driscoll, and as per usual, I'm welcomed by my younger brother, Matt Driscoll.
Chris, always a pleasure to be on. Thank you for having me again.
Yep, and my older brother, John Driscoll.
Hey, H, thanks for having me on again, man.
Absolutely. And in addition to John and Matt, we do have a first-time guest. We have a family friend of ours, Timmy McEnany, on the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Excited for a good podcast here today.
100%. So we have a couple first here. So first of all, we first time ever we have a 4-man podcast. So we usually only have 2 or 3. So it's great to have as many more mouths on to talk about some shop. And in addition to that, I've mentioned before. I mentioned this last week. We talked about Man Squad basketball, the high school basketball last week, but other than that, we've pretty much always talked about the NBA. So it's usually the NBA. But however, since we figured that the March Madness tournament starts this week, that we'll talk a good amount about that after we talk about some NBA. So anyway, the only NBA segment we wanted to talk about was the Warriors-Lakers game. So I actually watched the entire game at the bar in New York City. So that was a very typical experience. However, I did take some notes afterwards, and it was mainly just around the entire narratives around the NBA at this point. So that's obviously just anytime it happens whenever LeBron and Steph play each other. And I felt this narrative kind of happened more so when they played each other a couple weeks ago when the game went into overtime. It's always the two of them always go back and forth no matter what. But yeah, I have a couple thoughts on it, but I was wondering if Matt, did you have any thoughts on that?
On the game itself, not really. They're playing better, the Lakers and Warriors, but they're still the 9 and 10 seed. And I know in a minute we're going to talk about LeBron and Steph still being the face of the league, so we'll touch on that later. But the West is tough, but they are playing better, the Lakers and Warriors, but still sitting that they would play each other in the play-in. So one of these teams is not going to make the playoffs, and it's going to be weird to not see either Steph or LeBron in the playoffs.
Yeah,
John,
just not really much to touch on the overall game. I know the biggest thing around it was the 30-minute review on the shot clock. I get like the video review is an important part, and it's definitely saved a lot of bad calls. But for a nationally televised game to take 30 minutes to kind of figure out the shot clock malfunction, it's not acceptable, and something's got to change.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And it's not like it's even just a national television game. This happens all the time. When I think about it the most, I think it was 2021 where it happened. It was the Clippers played the Suns, and there was just a million reviews. And one of them was actually when Pat Bev was complaining to the refs the entire time, and it actually ended up screwing them over. So it was almost like a bad karma there for them. But yeah, I haven't seen much improvement there because in every big game ever, it feels like there's always at least one review that takes at least 5 minutes, and it shouldn't really take that long. But yeah, Matt mentioned the Warriors and the Lakers are playing better. They're both the 9 and the 10 seed now, just behind the Mavs, the Kings, and the Suns. So yeah, it'll be those 5 teams probably competing for the 6th seed, and then the 7th and 8th seed. Obviously, you don't want to be the 9th or the 10th seed because you don't want to be facing elimination games twice in a row. And then I know that some people say, "Oh, you can never count out Steph, LeBron, or AD in the playoffs." I can actually. I'm very much counting those guys out. I don't think they're going to win a playoff series because as much as those guys are phenomenal, I just don't really believe in their ability to carry as much as they used to. And that's no shot at them, but they've been. Yeah, we'll talk about it now. They've been the two faces of the league for a very, very long time now, and eventually, Father Time catches up to you. But which I know sounds silly because they both played great games, especially with Steph in the second quarter. But yeah, we'll talk about the ability of like the face of the league. I know that a lot of people were complaining about how the league's going to be in massive trouble after LeBron and Steph retire, just because it's the two of them carrying the league in the ratings the entire time. I know some people might agree with that, but I really don't actually. And mainly just because first of all, we've seen this before where the older guys just refuse to age, and the entire face of the league aspect of it. We saw it with Tom Brady. He was someone who just refused to age. He won 7 Super Bowls, and this last one was against Patrick Mahomes, who's the new up and coming star. We saw this with Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson going head to head all the time. It was only a couple years ago where the two of them had like a big outing together. There's a couple other sports as well where guys just they basically just play until their legs fall off, and I don't really think that's really a bad thing. And even when those guys retire, maybe the league takes like a step back in ratings for like a couple years, but there's always another big name coming up. So I don't know. I don't know if anyone else had anything to say about that.
Like you said, I think the league's in very safe hands. Once LeBron and Steph retire, we got guys like Jason Tatum, who's only 25, who actually recently just turned 26. Luka is 24, 23 or 24, I believe. You still got Giannis and Jokic too, who are two of the top 2 players in the league. I don't think it's bad that Steph and LeBron are still considered the face of the league. I think if LeBron is a top 2 player of all time, arguably top 1. And Steph's a arguably top 10 player of all time. If you're like historically that good, you're out an auto bid into the Hall of Fame. You're going to be the face of the league until you retire, and I think that's just the way it is. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I just to build on that, I agree. I mean, how would you be upset with LeBron James being the face of the league when he's kind of proven that he's ageless? It's almost more interesting to watch him play just because of his age. I mean, it's never been done before, and just like in this game against the Warriors, it was just a complete LeBron show. I mean, he had 48 and 9, 15 to 23 from the field, and if you look at his team, it's really not like going back to that game. It's just you look at the injuries. I mean, AD obviously didn't play the entire game, but guys like Christian Wood, Vincent, Reddish, Vanderbilt, like even if they come back, does it really matter? Even if they did play and all their injuries went poof. Like, I agree. It's too much of a load to carry at this age. He's not as good as he used to be, but he's not far from it though. And a guy like Steph Curry, I mean, he changed basketball. I mean, the 3-point shot wasn't as prevalent, so I really don't think it's a bad thing to still have him as the face of the league.
Yeah, both great points by the both of you. Like you said to me, I don't think there's an issue with having these older guys as still the face of the league when they're both playing at an extremely high level. I mean, yeah, they're not 1 and 2 or top 5 in the league currently right now, but you're lying if you say you're a fan of a team and you see LeBron James or Steph Curry coming up on the schedule. It doesn't get you a little nervous because those guys are capable of dropping those 40, 8, 9 games. So yeah, I don't think it's an issue. And I think when they retire, there are plenty of young stars. And the whole discourse around, the league's in shambles and these guys retire are only coming from, the annoying fans of those 2 players who are usually the loudest speakers in the group. But I think it's not an issue that they are still, and I don't think it's going to be an issue when they're not the face of the league either.
Yeah, and another guy we didn't even mention is, Wemby. He's something we've never seen before too. Yep. So it's another guy that the league is in really good hands with. And just another person that's interesting to watch because of his own different reason.
International player too, so you get all that around.
Matt, I would like to correct you earlier when you said that Luka was 23 or 24. He just turned 25, and I know that because I'm 3 months older than him exactly. So, So you can tell
getting too old.
Yeah, you can tell that I'm not at all bitter that I'm older than a lot of these up and coming stars, which is ridiculous. So, all right. So, that's it for the NBA, which feels weird that we only talked about the NBA for less than 10 minutes, which is very untypical on the show. But we just wanted to hop into college hoops. I'll just be straight up. College hoops, I'm not into as much as the NBA. I probably watch college hoops more this year than any other year, but I would say I'm a 97 out of 100 on NBA, but then probably like a 75 out of 100 for college basketball. So, but probably the other 3 guys around me are very, very much you're in very much good hands to hear these guys' opinions on it. So we'll just start off basically by just talking about before we get into the tournament and the actual games, we'll talk about some of the you could call them either honorable mentions or you can call them the snubs out of who didn't make the tournament. I can see that John is very unbiased with the hat he's wearing, and let's see what his opinion is on that topic.
Yeah, I just think that it's obviously. I think our dad went to St. John's. We like to follow and root for their team. I do think they got robbed. I think that leading up to Selection Sunday, they talked about net a lot, and St. John's found themselves in that group, and I thought they were deserving. The Isaiah Thomas meme. I met the criteria, but I wasn't selected. I think it comes down to the Big East is it was quiet for a little bit, but it's gotten a lot better over the years, and you might call it top heavy, and I understand that. UConn, the best team in the nation right now, followed by a couple other great teams. I think what really kind of hurt St. John's was the bottom of that conference with DePaul mostly, and our Uncle Tony went to Georgetown, so we won't talk too poorly about the Georgetown Hoyas, but they had a really disappointing year. DePaul went, I think, 0-20 in conference play this year. So I think when it comes down to it, yeah, they did get robbed. They didn't get much help from the bottom of their conference. But that being said, I know we like to group St. John's and Seton Hall. I thought they both were deserving, but I thought St. John's was trending in the right direction and kind of catching momentum. They, smoked Seton Hall at the Garden, and then played UConn pretty well, I thought, in the semifinals of the Big East. So I do think they got robbed, and I'll kick it to the guys who know a little bit more about college hoops than me.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. Obviously, I'm a St. John's fan. But before I start, I just want to say I'm happy to be. We are joined by known college basketball savant Tim McEnany on this show. The reason why he's on the show is to talk college hoops, so I'm excited to discuss more with him. But St. John's, you talked about net, John. They were net 32, and on the Ken Palm rankings, they were 26. They won 6 straight games before they lost to the last year's national champs UConn, who some are saying is the best team in the nation. Virginia is 44 spots below St. John's in the Ken Palm ranking, and they made it in. I didn't think they were very deserving. It's tough. I know you mentioned Seton Hall as well. Both of these teams had over 20 wins. And Seton Hall, obviously, they beat UConn and they beat Marquette, which is 2 of the top teams in the Big East and even in college basketball in general. I thought this was interesting. I saw this stat somewhere. The Pirates became the first team in the Big East history to miss the tournament after finishing at least 5 games over 500 in conference play.
Wow.
So I don't really know how they didn't make it. I think they got robbed. Only 3 Big East teams that made it. I think it's disappointing, definitely to say. I think at least 5 of them, if you want to include Providence in there, 6 of them should have made it. But the upsets, the bid stealers in the last couple games, the last couple of tournament championships caused them to not make the tournament. So it's definitely disappointing, but it is what it is.
Yeah, the Big East was probably the most disrespected conference this year. They had 3 20-plus wins teams not make it. Seton Hall, St. John's, and you guys haven't mentioned, but Providence had a really good resume too, and they had 20-plus wins. But, if you just look at their resume, non-conference, they were rocky. They started season 2-2. I'm a Michigan fan, and that turned out to be a putrid loss. Juwan Howard, I had to mention at one point on the show, very excited he is no longer the coach of Michigan. He kind of destroyed that entire program. But, and then they had a 4-game win streak after that non-conference and then beat a BC team who's much improved this year, actually. So I'd consider that a good win. 11-9 in conference. They were 5th in the Big East, like you guys said. They started off 4-1 in conference too and came out blazing. Dogfight loss to UConn at UConn only by 4 points, so that you almost have to consider a win. 1 point loss at Creighton. That's probably another net win. And then they finish off 6-1 in the Big East, like if you include the Big East tournament. So they're obviously one of the hottest teams in America. They had 5 losses by under 5 points in conference, so they're obviously very, very competitive. And if you just look at the conference, the top of the conference is great. UConn, number 1 overall seed. Marquette's a 2 seed, and Creighton's a 3 seed. So, that's proving the strength of the conference. Like you said, net ranking of 32, which is the worst ever to not make the tournament until this year. Another team that got snubbed was Indiana State with a net ranking of 28, although they were 1-4 in quad one, so not as impressive as a resume in my eyes. But I mean, the eye test with St. John's obviously shows that they can play with anyone, and even in their losses, they're still competitive. It's not like they're getting completely smoked. And then I had another thing I wanted to ask you guys. So what are your thoughts on St. John's declining playing in the NIT?
I did see that. I saw Patino came out and said they weren't going to play. I wish they would play in the NIT. I mean, I know he's saying it's so guys with like the transfer portal and stuff. But I wish they would just play in the NIT, and I think they would have been like top 1 or 2 seed in the NIT. So I kind of wish they were playing just so I could watch them some more this year. But a little disappointed they're not playing.
Yeah, I agree with Matt on disappointed that they're not playing just so we could watch them a little more. I don't know if Patino kind of declined it and for the reason that he thought he was disrespected by the committee and kind of wanted to say screw you, but he did say that it was because of the transfer portal and stuff. I don't know how accurate that really is. But, at the end of the day, I stand by Rick. He can he decides. So.
Yeah, I mean, he is a dog in the portal. If you look at his team this year, I mean, they had 9 new guys, 9 faces from the portal, and then they also got Simeon Wilcher to flip. So, if he continues to do that, he can kind of do whatever he wants. I kind of agree with you.
Yeah, I don't mind too much. Like, I don't mind too much. Like, it could be nice. Like, I know that a lot of people might see it as arrogance or like a little petty. But at the end of the day, as our dad said, you're pretty much just competing for 65th place. And as cool as it is to compete with to have been like one of the better teams in that tournament, does it really matter? Like it's almost like, not even almost, like it's even worse. It's like in the World Cup or like the Olympics when you compete for the bronze medal. Like it's a cool thing to do, but does anyone really care? So yeah, it's kind of like that. Just came up with that on the spot, by the way. Yeah, cool. Great work on coming up with the snubs, guys. I thought that was pretty good. So
yeah, and just one more thing I wanted to say. It didn't come down to St. John's not making it. I think it's more so there's an unprecedented amount of bid stealers this year. I mean, NC State winning the ACC, no one expected that. I mean, they were a solid team, but no one thought they would win. UAB wins the American because FAU lost to Temple, and that's another team that if I was a St. John's fan, I'd be scratching my head over a little bit. I guess they have the aura of their last year's run, but if you look at the numbers, it's really not anything special. New Mexico winning the Mountain West makes that a 6-bid league, which is the most the Mountain West has ever had. Not even and then Oregon winning and being the 4th or 5th Pac-12 team, I believe. So, I mean, if you just look, FAU's non-conference probably got them in. I mean, Colorado, as a 3rd Pac-12 team, that's pretty fair. And then SDSU was just the last at-large bid, the Mountain West. So I just think it really came down to them getting unlucky with other teams stealing bids versus them not having the resume to get in.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Matt, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say about NC State. I saw a little something on Twitter yesterday. NC State now has more wins in Capital One Arena than the Wizards do this year. They won 5 straight in 5 days, and the Wizards only have 4 wins at home this year. So I thought that was pretty funny.
I wanted to mention one thing actually from that Pac-12 championship. But they had that the center. I don't want to butcher his first name, but it's Dante. I think he went 13 of 13 from the field. I kind of related it a lot to Timmy playing at St. Dennis with some size guards trying to guard him in the paint. But that was a great game. There was a lot of good talent there, and yeah.
Cool. So now we're going to move on to the actual tournament. Oh, one more thing before, like you could tell all of us aren't very upset about this entire thing, but But okay, so we mentioned three Big East teams made it. 6 Mountain West teams made it. I think that's the most. That's the stat that blows me away the most. And like I'm not one to poo-poo on smaller schools, but come on, like I don't think it's very fair. But cool. So yeah, moving on to we're gonna talk about the actual tournament now, and we'll break it down based on conference. We'll just do that quickly. Because later we're going to talk about some of the best bets that are on the table, and then very end of the episode, the 4 of us will each give our final 4 picks. So to begin, we'll talk about the East, which is headlined by the reigning champs UConn. There's a couple other great teams on there, including Iowa State and Illinois. So I was wondering, Timmy, is there anything that really stands out to you in this bracket?
The thing that stands out to me in this bracket is this is not made for the number 1 overall seed. I think this is a bloodbath of a region. I mean, you have some of the major conference winners. You have the Big Ten champ in Illinois. You have the SEC champ in Auburn. You have the Big 12 champ in Iowa State. And then you have the Big East champ. Like, if you're the number 1 seed, you probably wouldn't think there'd be 3 of the top 5, top 6 major conference winners in your same bracket. So I think UConn almost got a bad draw, if that makes sense. But this regional is also being played in Boston at TD Garden. So everything's a home game for them. So that's another thing I would say, but I'll let you guys get into your thoughts, and then I'll come back later.
Yeah. So like Timmy said, this is a very hard draw for UConn. You mentioned Iowa State, who I know John will talk about in a little bit, but I want to talk about Auburn. I actually have Auburn coming out of this region. Right now they're at plus 1,700 to win it all. I'm not saying I like it, but I definitely don't hate it. So, like Timmy said, they're the SEC champion. They play 9 or 10 guys. 9 guys are playing over 15 minutes a game, and I think their 10th guy is averaging like 13 minutes a game. They've been shooting the ball well. They play great defense. The only concern is rebounding, which I know UConn is one of UConn's strong points, but it's not like it's UConn's region to lose. You Auburn, San Diego State, Illinois, and Iowa State can all give them a run for their money. So I was just I'll let John talk about Iowa State a little more.
Yeah, I mean, when I first looked at this bracket, I was kind of astounded at this section just of how, strong it is. And, Timmy made a point where UConn didn't really do UConn many favors with being the, defending champs and, the overall number 1 seed. I really like Iowa State. I think they're trending in a really good direction. From what I've read and watched on them, they play really, really good defense. They don't rely on the 3 ball, which it could be a great thing or not so great thing. It just kind of, when a team can rely on the 3 ball and they get hot, they can kind of pull away. But if you don't rely on it, then you're kind of more consistent. They absolutely smoked Houston in their conference championship. I have them coming out this section. Granted, is that a little bit of negative bias towards UConn? Maybe, but I do like the way that they're kind of built and the way they're trending.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a good amount of what was said. I don't want to really give away my pick, even though I kind of am right now. But UConn, I just feel like UConn is above and beyond everyone else as of right now, just because it feels like even in the games that they really don't like. I feel like you're getting good on both ends. That first of all, they close out and close games, and also they don't really play in many close games. Maybe their lack of experience in close games is going to end up kicking them. But obviously, it's the NCAA, so you really can't predict much. You can't really predict certain teams missing their free throws in the second half. So that'll be interesting to see. Does anyone else have anything to say about the East? I know, Tim, you said you wanted to add on something, right?
Yeah, so I'm actually agreeing with Matt here. I'm taking Auburn to come out of the region. They're like the prototype March Madness team. They're just deep. They play 10 guys over 14.6 minutes a game each, at least. You don't really see that as much in a lot of these Power 5 teams anymore. They had the lowest field goal percentage against inside the arc and top 15 in 3-point percentage against behind the arc. So they're coming in off a SEC championship, as I said, 6-game win streak too. So they're hot right now. Their physical team was size, which is obviously an issue with Klingon on UConn. Janai Broom 6'10", and then Dylan Cardwell 6'11", 255. So they have guys that can bang around, and if one gets in foul trouble, it's not as much of an issue. But as I said, this is probably, if you're in the East, it's probably the toughest road to a national championship. It's the toughest region. And since it's so tough, I mean, really anything can happen. Like, nothing would really surprise me. And I mean, Auburn's road is pretty tough. I mean, they got to play Yale. And I know a bit about Yale because I'm a little still salty about Cornell losing to them in Ivy Madness. But they got a 7-footer that runs the show, kind of handles the ball a lot. But I think Auburn just has too much talent. San Diego State was in the Final Four last year, so you really can't just roll over against them and say it's going to be an easy win. I think if Auburn plays UConn, it's going to be the best game of the entire tournament. I think the game, it's not a huge disadvantage that it's at TD Garden, but I still like Auburn here. I just think they're way too hot. And I think Iowa State, I read this stat, they're coming in hot. They just won the hardest conference, the best conference by far. But no unranked team to start the season has ever made the Final Four as a 1 or a 2 seed. And Iowa State came into the year unranked. And then another thing I would say is some teams I like in this to kind of go on a little mini run is BYU. It's a high-powered offense. They shoot the crap out of the ball. And they're obviously battle-tested because they're in the Big 12. And then another team I like is Drake. I mean, Tucker DeVries, you're going to remember the name. He was Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year, and they could really make some noise and even give Iowa State some trouble. But I think overall, even Vegas has Auburn as the second favorite to leave the group. So I really think they are leaning on this UConn-Auburn matchup happening, and then whoever wins that, I think, will come out on top from the region.
Good stuff. Great. Yeah. Great stuff. As far as it goes for the East, definitely going to be very interesting. As we mentioned, it's going to be a bloodbath, very aggressive teams, and I think it's going to be very well. The tournament might run through them. So we'll go down lower in the bracket now. We'll talk about the West. That's headlined by UNC, of course. It seems like every other year they're always one of the top teams. I think they won it back in 2017. When I graduated high school. So 2017. It's also by Arizona and Baylor, the two other top teams, Alabama as well. I guess we'll start off with John. You have anything to take away from that part of the bracket?
Yeah, I guess this part of the bracket I kind of struggled with. I have UNC coming out of it. I do think that's probably the favorite or the most popular choice. They have a lot of experience with Baycott. And I think that I had a couple upsets here. I picked Grand Canyon over St. Mary's just because I watched them last weekend, and they seemed like a fun team. But not really much to touch on. I really like RJ Davis too, another guy with experience. Really like the way he plays the game. I'll kick it to somebody who knows a little bit more about this section though.
I'll talk before Timmy talks about it because Timmy's going to know a little more. But I also have UNC coming out of this region. They just won the ACC. Very experienced team. I think experience is extremely important in March. They have 2 guys who scored over 2,000 points in their college career. But I think something interesting is if they end up playing Arizona, it would be a Caleb Love revenge game as he used to play on UNC, transferred to Arizona. But it's funny, John, you had St. Mary's losing in the first round because I think they could make a little run here. I know they haven't played a lot of good teams, but they've beaten Gonzaga 2 out of 3 times. They've only lost one game since Christmas, and that was to Gonzaga. They play slow, and they just they suck the life out of opposing teams. So I think it would be interesting if they could make a little run.
Yeah, so for my region winner, I have Arizona. My thought process was Arizona actually has one of the easier roads probably to the Final Four. I think this is one of the weaker regions. They have reliable scoring options. They have Caleb Love and Omar Ballo. Strong non-conference schedule, as well as a pretty good Pac-12 this year. They were top 15 in offensive and defensive efficiency, and all of their starters average at least 9.8 points per game. So you're not really relying as much on one guy as certain teams. Really, kind of anyone can go off at any given time. Vegas agrees, as they have Arizona slated at plus 180, which is the favorite to come out of the West. And their opponents early on, which I have them matching up with actually Alabama and Baylor later on. I think they both struggle against this Arizona team because Arizona really can just kill you in so many different ways. And I don't really love what I see out of UNC. Armando Bacot's like 30 years old is like the running joke. He's coming back for like his 12th year. So I don't know. I'm not sold on him. I think whenever he plays someone with the same height or size as him, he really struggles. Cormac Ryan kind of is inconsistent behind the arc from them. And RJ Davis just one bad game away from them being in big trouble. So I really like Arizona. I think it's just a smooth ride for them. And also the Final Four is in Arizona this year, so I think that's extra motivation to kind of make it. But some teams to take risks on, I liked. Mississippi State was a team I liked. Josh Hubbard and Tolo Smith really carried this team into like a very, very hot run towards the end. I mean, they destroyed Tennessee, who was probably a 1 seed coming into conference tournaments, and they lost by 17 to Mississippi State. And they put up a pretty good fight against Auburn, who is obviously I really like, and they're my region winner. But as you guys said, that Grand Canyon St. Mary's game, I think either of those teams, whoever wins that game, could do some damage. I mean, Grand Canyon's probably the best non-Power 5 school like recently in the past 2 or 3 years. They went 29-4, but their schedule is pretty weak. They're top 65 offensive and defensive efficiency, but they don't have depth. That's their issue. So, and they also got to play St. Mary's, as Matt said. I mean, they're going to play at a snail's pace, and they're going to kind of suffocate you on the defensive end. And then another team that kind of is popular and kind of surprisingly is actually favored to win their game by like a point or two is New Mexico. They're playing Clemson. They just won the Mountain West, which we said was a 6-bid league, which you guys weren't too happy about, but it actually was a pretty strong league this year. And they're just a high-scoring team that doesn't turn the ball over really. So I see a lot of people having them go to their Sweet 16. I'm not that high on them. I have them just winning one game, but I think they're a team that people are going to overlook and can be pretty dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. Good work. Yeah. Like I agree with you on UNC. Actually had them losing to Michigan State. Yeah. There's. I feel like there's always at least one seed that loses in the second round. Yeah, like I just like Michigan State's history mainly. Yeah, I think they're well coached. Even though some people felt like they were ranked a little too high. Yeah, I feel like teams like that sometimes end up overachieving. So, and I also pretty sure that I also have. I actually have Michigan State losing to St. Mary's later. So, but as we mentioned, it's like a little bit of a weaker bracket. So, we'll move on now to the Midwest. Yeah, that's headlined by Purdue, Tennessee, and Creighton as well. And then obviously Kansas and Gonzaga, the 4 and the 5 seed. You can never count some of the bigger name schools out. I'll actually start off talking about this one, just because I feel like I'm a little more knowledgeable than I was for the other ones. Yeah, like obviously Purdue is a team that historically has made some noise, and in the tournament, and that's probably going to be no surprise this year. However, I do have Purdue losing in the Elite Eights to Gonzaga, actually. And I know Gonzaga, it's like a meme that they always end up choking in the tournament, which you could say is true. But however, 63 out of the 64 teams choke every year. So, or not choke, but lose every year. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the expectations are for Gonzaga this year, but I do. Yeah, I know that Mark Few, their head coach, is a little polarizing, but however, I still think that he's debatably top 5 coach in the league in the country currently, and definitely one of the better coaches of all time. So, Matt, what are your takeaways on the Midwest?
So you said like Purdue makes noise a lot. I'm not really huge on Purdue. I know they're a 1 seed and they had a disappointing tournament last year, obviously losing to FDU. And usually I like you lose in like Virginia a couple years ago, lost in the first round, and they won it the next year. But I have Tennessee beating them in the Elite Eight. I have actually Tennessee is my pick to win it all. They're they're a 2 seed. They they play good defense. They're top 20 in defense and offense. They have the SEC Player of the Year, who averaged 25.5 points in conference play and 21, I believe, in non-conference play. They can win in a whole lot of different ways. They can play big, play small. But the only problem with Tennessee is they're a little inconsistent sometimes. But I like Tennessee to come out of the Midwest. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, I know I said this for the West, but I think I can say it probably for all sections of the bracket. I don't feel confident in many decisions. Thank God we have Timmy here to kind of settle our disagreements. For this, I mean, we mentioned Purdue a lot. I actually have upset alert in the round of 32. I have Purdue losing to TCU. TCU was kind of an interesting team to me when I was looking over it. They did beat Houston early in January. I know they lost recently to them, but they played Iowa State really close. And I think, for lack of a better term or phrase, I picked TCU to beat Purdue just because I'm not really a believer in Purdue. They're, a little bit up and down. I do have Tennessee coming out of this section. I have Gonzaga making it pretty far and losing to Tennessee there. Gonzaga doesn't really have any of those big names that they have had in the past, but, Chris mentioned Mark Few. He's a great coach, and I think he has the experience and the ability to kind of lead them deep into the tournament.
All right, so don't make fun of me, but my pick to win the Midwest is Purdue.
Switch now.
So I'm always been a bit of a contrarian, like in terms of, I don't know if it's done me right or wrong, but I mean, we all know the demons are fighting. I mean, they lost to Fairleigh Dickinson, they lost to St. Peter's and North Texas. That's pretty bad, like very, very bad. But I mean, they only had 4 losses this year. They lost to Northwestern, Nebraska, Ohio State, and Wisconsin. And after every single loss, they went on a 6 or 7 game win streak. So if they just do that again, they actually probably win it all. So they're coming off a loss to I think it was Wisconsin. They went undefeated in a brutal out-of-conference schedule too. I mean, they played the Zags, they played Tennessee, they played Marquette, Alabama, Arizona. So they were not afraid of anyone, and they were like, let's kind of get battle tested and ready for March, because I mean, it's obviously been an issue. And if we look at the teams that they've had the 2 past years, I mean, so 2 years ago was Jaden Ivey's team, I believe, and that team could score, just no defense, lack of perimeter defense, and that's what killed them. Last year's team was the opposite. Great defense, lack of shooting. They were 277th in the country in shooting from 3, at a really stinky 32.2%. And when you have a guy like Edey in the middle and you're shooting at 32.2%, it probably would be even lower if you didn't have him, because he draws so many guys and they get so many open looks. So this is why I think this year's team really has the tools. Is they're second in the country this year in 3-point percentage. They're shooting 40.8% from 3 behind the arc. They're 12th in points per game. They're 4th in offensive rating, and they're 103rd in defensive rating, which I think is good enough I mean, they're not a great defensive team, but I mean, they've proven all year with all the non-conference teams they've beaten that it's been good enough to beat the best of the best. And if you look at their path, I think Utah State and TCU, I just don't think they can handle UD. He's just too big. And the thing it always frustrates me to go against them, because it always feels like when you go against a team like Purdue, you just watch Zach Edey and you get angry because you're like, oh, he's not even that good. It's just because he's so big, which is partly true, but it's also, I mean, he's big. There's nothing you can really do to stop him. And then so some of my teams to take risks on, and this might be one of my favorite kind of risky, high risk, high reward game of the whole entire March Madness is Samford. They play Kansas. Kansas is banged up bad. I mean, Hunter Dickinson and McCullough didn't even play in the Big 12 tournament. They came off a really bad loss. Dickinson's practicing non-contact, keyword non-contact. And McCullough, they still don't even know. Bill Self doesn't even know. So I think they're a really good team to take a risk on. I think it's to a point where if Kansas wins that game, I think they run into the Zags and lose to the Zags straight up. So I think why not just pick Samford to win the one game? Because in my opinion, I think Gonzaga beats Samford or Kansas. Another team I would take a risk on is South Carolina. They kind of are a little disrespected all year. It took them a while to get in the top 25 when they had the resume well before other teams. And I think they're being overlooked again. I mean, Purdue, I think, is like a 1-point dog or a 1-point favorite. Or not Purdue. Oregon is a 1-point dog or 1-point favorite against them. And I think that's a little disrespectful. I think they finished the year like 16th or somewhere in the top 25. And then another team, I always like taking one of the playing games. That UVA is like, I'm going to fall asleep watching them, but they do win games. And then Colorado State is another team out of the Mountain West. I think they play Texas, and I'm not sold on Texas this year, but I would say my key kind of team to keep an eye on is Samford.
Timmy, I actually had a question about you said Gonzaga definitely will beat Samford or Kansas. Do you think McNeese has any chance to beat the Zags? I know a lot of buzz around them.
Yeah, they're kind of like every year there's like the Murray State of the bracket. It's the 12-5 that everyone kind of in America falls in love with. And this year it's McNeese State. I think people are underrating just how good Gonzaga is. Obviously they have a chance. I think they won 30-plus games or 28, 29-plus games or something like that. But I don't think they're good enough in my eyes. But I know it's a very, very popular 12-5. But I think the Zags are going to give Purdue trouble. So I think that might be Purdue's probably one of their harder games just to get out of this region. But, yeah, I mean, it's obviously possible, but I'm not sold. I think the Zags are too well coached, and I think they're just too big and too good.
Yeah, fun fact about McNeese, they have not beaten a tournament team this year, anybody in the tournament. So, it's kind of an easy path. But like you said, there's always a 12-5 that everyone falls in love with. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, too. It's like every year there is this one team that everyone falls in love with, whether it be like, I think Furman against UVA one year, everyone loved Furman. But I think that this year it is that McNeese State team. But as I said earlier, I'm always a contrarian a little bit because I feel like that's how you win your bracket is you can't do what all the popular upsets are, and you kind of got to go off the grid a little bit. And obviously it's not a direct science. I mean, it's college basketball. The top 25 changes every week for a reason. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sold.
Okay. Yeah. Don't mean to cut anyone off, but I just did want to let you guys know that we have about 12 minutes left because there's another show coming on Showdown at 7:00. But I know that we wanted to talk. Obviously, we're going to talk about the South one more time. I know that Timmy wanted to add in some of his some of his favorite bets, and then the four of us are going to give our Final Four and championship picks. So let's just jump right into that, but just be mindful of the time when you're giving your.
I could start us off. I'll go quick.
Sure, absolutely.
For the region winner, I got Houston. They were the best team in the best conference. Jamal Shed runs the show for them. He won Player of the Year. Well, I think he averaged like 13 points a game, and he was the Player of the Year, which has never happened before in the Big 12. They don't turn the ball over, 7th in the country in turnovers, and they're 7th in the country in steals, so they turn you over. I mean, it's just like suffocating defense. Everyone's athletic. Everyone can run. Everyone can move. And then their coach, Kelvin Sampson's putting himself in the conversation with the best program and the best coach in the country. I don't think they have the toughest road either. I mean, Nebraska and A&M, I don't think they have trouble with each of those teams. I'm definitely uncomfortable, but not losing confidence. The Duke team, all the talent in the world, they just don't play accordingly. I mean, Tyrese Proctor, Jared McCain, Filipowski, they have all the guys kind of what they haven't done anything all year. Kentucky, they have all the talent in the world too, probably more talent than that Duke team. They have Calipari, obviously, but something's missing with them, and that's just defense. They don't play defense. I think I had it down. They give up like 84, like some ridiculous amount of points a game, ranking like 250th plus in points per game opposing team. And then Marquette, Tyler Kolik's coming in the tournament a little banged up. I'm not sold on them. And then some of my teams to take risks on are Florida. I think they can run with the best of them as they have wins over Auburn, Kentucky, and Bama twice, but then they also can not show up. You have no clue what you're going to get whenever they play. JMU had the most wins in Division I. Wisconsin's a very beatable team, super inconsistent, plays Purdue tough, and then they lose to a bad team. And then Texas Tech, as I said, they play Kentucky in that next round. I have it slated, and their guards just don't play defense. DJ Wagner, Dillingham, Reeves, they don't play defense. Here's the stat: 79.7 points per game against, 340th in the country. So it's going to be an NBA game out there, probably worse actually, because there's less time and more points. But Kentucky has all the talent, but I mean, if they have an off shooting game, it's over because they don't play defense.
Mm-hmm. Two things actually to add on to that. First of all, you stole my Kentucky talking point. That's one of the only things I knew about anyone in this part of the bracket. So it was that Kentucky's one of the best offenses in the league, but he was saying league. It's in the nation, and but pretty brutal defensively. So great on that. And I also do appreciate you bringing up Florida, because someone just left a comment saying thoughts on UF. So that's it's a great add-on by you. But Matt, what else did you want to add on about this part of the bracket?
So I was looking at this Elite Eight matchup between Houston and Kentucky for quite some time on my bracket. That's who I think is going to be fighting to win the region. I know you guys just kind of shit on them, but I am going to pick Kentucky. I know defense, it's going against everything I believe in about defense is important in March, but they're second in points per game. They play fast. It's going to be very tough to beat Houston. I think Houston gives up like only 57 points a game or something. It's ridiculous. But they play fast, and I know you said if they have an off shooting night, it's over, but they are pretty efficient. They do shoot the three well. They do shoot the two well as well. So Kentucky's my pick to come out of this region.
Yeah, I'll be really brief. You guys touched on a lot of great stuff. I have flip-flopped between Houston and Kentucky a bunch of times too. I'll probably flip-flop 3 or 4 more times before Thursday. Right now I have Houston just pretty much based on defense coming out of this section. Timmy touched on JMU versus Wisconsin. Wisconsin's, seems like a really great offensive team, but can they really put it together defensively? It doesn't really seem like they have. That's pretty much what I got for this. Other than that, I think, NC State was really fun to watch last week. They won 5 games in 5 days, maybe with a little bit of rest. Can they continue that momentum? We'll see. But that's my upset from this section.
Yeah, I agree. This is kind of my craziest, I would say. I'm just looking at it right now, bracket. Speaking on Florida, I mean, my Sweet 16 is Houston, Duke, Texas Tech, and Florida. So I think this bracket is where kind of the non-defense can lose a game, and you can get a team like Texas Tech, who's coming out of the best conference, to win. And then a team like Florida, as I said, they can beat anyone. They've proven that they can.
Awesome work, guys. So Timmy, do you want to maybe give 3 of your either sleepers or your best bets? How about just 3 of your favorite bets throughout the tournament? Because I know that's something you want to touch.
I would say for me, I would say New Mexico. I like being favored as an 11 seed never really happens, and it's happening. So they did win the Mountain West. They're hot, and I'm not really sold on Clemson. And then, as I said earlier, Samford. There's a lot of question marks with Kansas. Don't really know who's playing, who's not, how healthy they are. And when they didn't have those 2 guys, they stunk. They were pretty bad. And then I'll let someone else do the third.
John, you want to take it?
I was going to kick it to you.
I was going to say for best bet, I guess I touched on it earlier, but it's I like St. Mary's going to the Sweet 16. This isn't like a first round bet, obviously, but I think St. Mary's could eventually beat UNC. I know UNC was my pick to make it out of the region, but I wouldn't be shocked if St. Mary's beat them and made a run at the Elite Eight or possibly the Final Four. Their pace of play and they're red hot. They've only lost 1 game since Christmas, like I said earlier. So I really like St. Mary's.
All right, so don't mean to rush anyone out, but however, I do want to be mindful of the next show on Chilltown/Sportsfluence. But I think now all I want us to do is just list out our Final Four and who makes it the championship game, and then who wins. So and you can add on just brief analysis, but just like ideally, I just want to get through the part of it. So I'll go first this time. So coming out of the East, I do have, as I mentioned earlier, I do have UConn. I know everyone has their concerns about them, but I do think that they're above and beyond everyone else. I also have Arizona. I like their style of play. Then coming out of the South, I mentioned Kentucky. Yeah, Kentucky is my team to come out. As much as I value defense, I do think that having a great offense also goes a long way in college basketball. And then I mentioned Gonzaga as well. So I think that Gonzaga and Kentucky would be a great game. Same thing with UConn, Arizona, and I do have UConn winning that game, along with Kentucky beating. By the way, I want to backtrack. I do have Kentucky beating Duke in the Elite Eight. That would be a legendary game. I do have Gonzaga beating Kentucky, and which makes the championship game would be UConn versus Kentucky, and I do feel like that game would come down to defense. So I would take. So UConn is my pick to win the national championship game. John, do you want to go next on that?
Yeah, just going from east to west to Midwest to South. I have Iowa State, UNC, Tennessee, and Houston. I have UNC beating Iowa State, and then Houston beating Tennessee, and then I have Houston's my pick to win it all this year.
Yeah, kind of touched on all these teams earlier, but I have Auburn and North Carolina in the East-West matchup. I have Auburn beating them and advancing to the final. And then I have Kentucky, Tennessee on the other side in the Final Four. I have Tennessee beating Kentucky. I think the lack of defense and eventually ends up catching up to them. And then I have Tennessee beating Auburn in the final. Tennessee's at plus 1,600 right now at DraftKings. I definitely don't hate that. I touched on them, but that's my national champion pick.
Take it away, Tim.
Yeah, so for my Final Four, I got Auburn, Arizona, Houston, and Purdue. I have Arizona beating Auburn simply from the fact that the game is in Arizona. And then I have Purdue beating Houston, and then I have Purdue winning it all. So everyone's going to make fun of this pick. It's either going to go down in glory and everyone's going to say you're the smartest person ever, or it's going to go down in flames and everyone's going to call me an idiot. But I'm going to go with Zach Edey.
Yeah, pretty wide range of picks. But that's college basketball for you. It's especially when you have people as unknowledgeable as me in college basketball. That's great way to close the show is giving our picks. We'll see how this ages in a couple weeks, not only in a couple weeks, but also next week, because I'm imagining we're also going to talk about it next week as well after once the Sweet 16 is determined. But anyway, John, Matt, Timmy, thanks for coming on. Timmy, thanks for coming on for the first time. Hope to have you on again eventually. But just a couple plugs. Like and subscribe to Sports Fluent and Showdown Hoops. Sports Fluent recently merged with Showdown Hoops, so like and subscribe. And also, if you wanted to make a membership account there, that's another great way of getting access to other episodes and everything like that. Personal plugs, follow me on all my social media accounts. It's All American Hooper on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I post daily on pretty much all of them. And also take a look at my column on primetimesportstalk.com. This podcast is also uploaded to that website. So those are all my plugs for everything. But as I mentioned, thanks to those who tuned in. It's only one of you watching now, but thanks to those who tuned in throughout the episode, and thanks to those who are watching it, who are going to end up watching it later in the day, which is awesome. But again, John, Matt, Timmy, thanks for coming on, and everyone else have a great night.
Thanks, Chris.